Sorry, try that again. Good morning and welcome. I'm Jesse Fortner, a board member here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Reston. Whether you're in Zoom or here in the sanctuary, we are so glad to have you with us today, and I am just pleased to see everybody. No matter how old or how young you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, however you identify, and whomever you love, know that you are welcome here. Just a few quick announcements today. Well, maybe not so quick, but as you may or may not know, our wonderful accompanist, Dr. Jesse Leong, is going to be moving on from his career, and today is his last day here with us here at UUCR. Yes, instead of booing, he's leaving. Let's applaud him. Thank you. Our music director, Cynthia Young, is on leave today, but she wrote a few words, and she's asked for me to share with you today. So, Jesse became our accompanist at the end of February 2020. What a great time that was, right? Pre-COVID. He had played for only about 3 services when the COVID pandemic started. And we moved to virtual-only services immediately. So for the next 18 months, Jesse not only played for our Zoom services from his electronic piano in his apartment, I don't know if everybody remembers that, but also he became our sound and video editor on the fly, helping us create over 50 choir and hymn videos, which I don't know about you, but I think they were very much appreciated. So thank you, Jesse. When we moved to hybrid services last September, Jesse was also there in person and accompanying the choir every week and playing beautiful piano solos. We will miss Jesse and his creative hymn improvisations and his beautifully expressive playing. Thank you, Jesse, for all the music that you have shared with us, and we wish you all, or excuse me, we all wish you the best in your future endeavors. So we hope that you all join us here at the church after the service for a small celebration in honor of Jesse at the Greet Your Neighbor Coffee Hour. Our service today is being led by Bob Anderson, Marsha Hughes-Rease, and Claire Tse. Bob Anthony, I am so sorry. Bob Anthony, Bob Anderson. Bob Anderson, it says on here, but Bob Anthony? Is Bob Anthony? I thought it was, but St. Bob, yeah, okay, sorry. Apologies, little bad thing on here. I was a little bit confused myself. Linda Weaver and Cynthia Young are off today, but they help plan today's service and all the times for all ages in music respectively. Jesse Leong is of course, serving as our accompanist, and UUCR members Megan Pitlock-Schmick is joining us as hymn leader today. Thank you all for participating in today's worship service, and thanks as always to our production team, our AV production team. It's on a rotating basis, but we have Amelia Turner, Mike Schmidt, David Niemi, and Maggie Mack helping us out. Now, let us center ourselves for worship service today. If you so choose, you can please take some just quick, small breaths with me. Now, let us enter our time for worship, and together we listen to a spiritual connection by John Baptiste. I'm probably butchering that name, but this will be performed by Jesse Leong.
What a glorious start to our worship service this morning. Thank you, Jesse. The word covenant means to be in agreement. As a backdrop for this morning's service, which will be a little different, I would like to remind us of the principles that bind us together as Unitarian Universalists. The covenant that binds us together as UUs. Principle 1, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Principle 2, we believe in justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Principle 3, we believe in the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation. Principle 4, we believe in the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Principle 5, we believe in the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and in our society at large. Principle 6, we believe in the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Principle 7, we believe in the respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. And many UU churches across the nation have adopted or are in the process of adopting the 8th principle. The 8th principle affirms and promotes journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. This morning, you will have the opportunity to engage with each other in what I hope to be powerful conversations. The purpose of the conversation is to provide you the opportunity to think together of a shared future and what will our collective action be as a beloved community. You will walk away with more questions than answers, and that is good. It means we need to continue the conversations until we can be in covenant once again.
Good morning. Our opening hymn today is number 346 in the Gray Hymnal. Come, sing a song with me. Please rise as you are in spirit or body as you are able. Thank you. Come, sing a song with me. Come, sing a song with me. Come, sing a song with me. And I'll bring you home when home is hard to find.
Today we light a special candle to acknowledge our sorrow over the loss of the protections offered by Roe v. Wade. Today's chalice lighting is from the UU Leadership Council. With humility and courage born of our history, we are called as Unitarian Universalists to build the beloved community. We are all souls are welcome as blessings, and the human family lives whole and reconciled. With this vision in our hearts and minds, we light our chalice.
Each Sunday, we intentionally recommit to each other by singing our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church. If you're at home, the words will be in your chat box, and if you're here, they'll be up there. Please rise if you are willing and able, and join me in singing our covenant.
Good morning and welcome. This summer, the children here at UUCR are exploring their connections to nature, one another, and their communities. These connections can be demonstrated through a game that's sometimes called Weaving the Web. In this game, people stand in a circle and create something that looks like a spider's web by passing yarn back and forth across the circle until everyone is holding part of the yarn web. After that, one person can tug on the yarn that they are holding to demonstrate that what happens to one plant, one animal, or one person affects all the others. Today's service is focused on a few of these strands: our interconnectedness with people. And we will consider how covenant, or the promises we make to one another, helps us maintain and mend the relationships we weave. Today, as the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly of 2022, with UUs from across the country gathered in person and online to do business, network, learn, and worship together, nears its end, UUs from outside of our congregation are joining us here via recordings, connecting us with the larger UU world. Let's hear what sage and religious educator Rayla Matson have to say about covenant.
So, Sage, you asked earlier what it meant to be in covenant with someone. And a covenant is like an agreement, like how we want to be with each other. So what's an agreement you could make with like a friend?
We be nice to each other and try our best.
So be nice to each other and try your best. Yeah. And what about what's an agreement or a way you want to be with your family?
I want to love them and get things on their birthday.
Love them and get them things on their birthday? You're so sweet. So what happens if someone like breaks the covenant? What happens if you and your friends agree that you're going to be nice to each other and you're going to have nice words with each other, and then one of you doesn't have nice words with each other? Then what happens? How do we come back into covenant or come back into agreement?
You can say I didn't like it. That can you please take it back?
Okay, so you can ask them to take their words back. Okay, or we can also ask them, hey, what you said hurt me. Can you be more mindful next time about the words that you use? Huh? Okay. So it's not always easy, right? When we make an agreement with someone to keep it. Do you agree with that, or you think it's always easy?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, so when you were younger, one of the things I said to you is that I would agree and covenant with you to use a nice voice, right? And not yell when I'm upset. But the other day, I was really upset because I was having a hard day. And I went to say something to your brother and sister. And instead of just saying it, Mommy yelled. Was that nice of me?
No.
No, right? Because I had agreed, right, to use a nice voice. And I yelled. But after I sat and I thought about it, I came back to them and I said, you know what? I'm sorry. Mommy agreed to use a nice voice with you, and I didn't do that. So I broke my covenant with them, right?
Yeah.
So I apologized and explained that I was having a rough day, but that was not a good reason for me to break covenant with them. And we talked about it, and I apologized, and I said I'm going to try moving forward to use my nicer voice, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that was good?
Uh-huh.
And how do you think they felt?
I think they felt proud of the mommy.
They were proud of their mommy?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they said, I'm glad that you recognized and you came to us and you said something about the way you were behaving. But sometimes we don't always notice that we've broken covenant, right? So maybe I came and I'm yelling at you and screaming at you, but then I don't ever come back and apologize. Then what happens?
You break the covenant.
I broke the covenant. But so could you say something to me about breaking the covenant?
Yeah.
What could you say to me?
Oh, I say you broke the covenant. Can you please fix it?
Okay, so you can tell me I broke the covenant and can I please fix it? And how in that case would I fix it?
You might say sorry, or sorry I yelled. I'll try to not do it.
Oh, that's nice. I'd say, sorry, I yelled, and I'm going to try in the future to not do that again. Yeah. Do you think it's good to have a covenant or an agreement with each other?
Yeah.
Why?
Because if you break it, you learn from your mistakes.
Because when you break covenant, you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
That's great advice, Sage.
Thank you so much, Rayla and Sage. Children are now invited to leave for activities. We will sing them out with Go With Joy, and the lyrics will be projected online and in the sanctuary.
Time in our service when we share our joys and concerns so that no one ever has to hold them alone. If you are joining us remotely this morning, you may wish to light a real or virtual candle wherever you are this morning to mark what is in your heart as members of the in-person congregation here in UUCR places stones in the water here in the sanctuary. If those of you at home would like to share what is in your heart today, in the congregational chat on the screen, please write to all attendees. Please remember that what you share will be public. Those at home may read other joys and concerns shared in the chat and then enter into their own time of reflection and prayer as we listen to Jesse play our meditation music. Welcome, come forward. Let us be one in prayer and meditation. Spirit of life and love that so faithfully animates our creation, we are grateful for this community that is with us in both times of joy and sorrow. We hold in our hearts this morning all who are facing any hardship or difficulty, those who are grieving or facing illness or disability in themselves or their friends or their loved ones. We especially pray for all women who will suffer as a result of Thursday's Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. May we find ways of acting to alleviate this affliction and to honor each woman's right to control their own body. May we also not forget the lessons of January 6th congressional hearings, how close we came to losing our democracy, how brave citizens placed their oath to the Constitution above the pressures of a corrupt president. And now, above all, we must defend democracy in the months and years to come. Looking beyond these horrors, let us not forget all the harms that call out for healing. racial divides, gun carnage, obscene wealth inequality, and of course, Mother Earth, who can no longer tolerate our excesses. For all these, we must remember that we must act and we must find joy in knowing that we are not alone. Here in UUCR, many of us, along with family and friends, have recently contracted COVID-19. We pray for their speedy and lasting recovery. Whether shared here this morning or held silently in our hearts, may our joys be multiplied in community, and may all gathered here find comfort and calm in ourselves and within this supportive community.
As a self-funded church, UUCR relies on the generosity of its members and friends to fund daily operations and ensure that the church and its resources are here for us today and for tomorrow. Pledges support our worship and music programs, our religious education programs, programs for members and friends, community outreach, and connections to Unitarian Universalism. We now invite you to support the work that UU Reston is making by making your donation to the collection plate if you're here in the sanctuary. And if you are at home or wish to use the to give online, you can use the link that will be provided in the slides and in the chat box. Thank you for your generosity and support of our beloved spiritual home. And also, as a friendly reminder, if anybody hasn't made their pledges from the last church year, our church year is getting ready to, or the fiscal year is getting ready to end at the end of June. I know that we were one that we had to be gently nudged, so please don't forget. Thank you.
A beautiful quilt hangs on the wall in my home office, where I now spend so much of my time, including taping many of my recordings. It was made by Unitarian Universalist Jennifer Centric, then a member of the First UU Church of Youngstown, Ohio, where I served as minister. I hung it up early in the pandemic when I realized that little office would be the place where I would spend most of my days. The quilt brings me joy. The cacophony of rainbow colors signify welcome and inclusion. Each triangle brings its own bright beauty, a celebration of the individuality of each person. And there's a whimsical line of stitching that runs throughout and along the quilt's border, bringing a feeling of playfulness and the joy that is present in belonging. As a whole, the quilt reminds me of how we are all stitched together, an expression of our fundamental interdependence. If there's one thing the last 2 years of pandemic have taught us, it's the reality of our inescapable interconnectedness. Experiencing wave after wave of COVID-19 spreading quickly across the globe reminds us that our lives are inextricably woven together. Early in the pandemic, we learned to wear masks, understanding that I wear my mask to protect you, and you wear your mask to protect me. We rely on one another, and we can act to protect one another, or our actions can put each other at more risk. As Unitarian Universalists, we have long articulated the importance of interdependence. We name it in our principles. We know it from our understanding of science and biology. And we understand it as universalists who reject ideologies of supremacy rooted in notions of the saved and the damned, instead embracing the worth and dignity of every person and the knowledge that no one is outside the circle of love. We know we belong to each other, and we belong to the earth and the web of creation itself. So what does this reality of our interdependence mean for our theology? Well, it's reflected in one of the ways we describe Unitarian Universalism. We say we are not a creedal tradition, but a covenantal one. We don't have a creed which all must profess. We don't all believe the same things about the nature of God or gods, or even share the same religious background. But what does bind us? The promises we make to one another about how we will live together in community and how we will live together in our larger world. You see, as Unitarian Universalists, a far more important question than what do you believe is how are we to live? And we answer this question through covenant. Covenant is our religious response to our fundamental interdependence. Because we are interconnected, because we belong to each other, our religious and moral impulse guides us to make promises to nurture the threads of our connection with justice and compassion and equity. Now, early formulations of covenant were understood as among believers with their God. But over the centuries, the influence of Unitarianism, Universalist theology, along with humanism, have reoriented our notions of covenant to be rooted in our relationships with one another, our wider humanity, and creation itself. We are a tradition concerned with the here and now and the conditions of people's lives today. One powerful example of this is how our principles are articulated as a covenant. We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We covenant to create practices that nurture justice and abiding compassion into the fabric of human relations. We covenant to join our efforts to work for a world where the web of life is infused with peace, justice, and equity, such that all people can thrive in their wholeness. The Universalists called this aspiration the kingdom of God. Today, we call it the beloved community. Covenant is a centerpiece of our theology because it calls us to practice and live our deepest values and the greatest aspirations we have for ourselves, humanity, and our world. Now, it's not about checking boxes and getting everything right. It's deeply spiritual work. It requires humility, listening, forgiveness, and open-heartedness. Because we are human, we don't live our promises perfectly. But covenant teaches us how to seek forgiveness from one another and ourselves, and it teaches us how to heal and come back together.
Covenants are life-affirming and life-saving because the truth is we need each other. We hold each other's well-being in our hands and in our actions. And this is not a burden, but an incomparable gift. It's why we love. It's why we create enduring friendships. It's why someone's art can stir another's heart. It's why we gather in religious community and are deeply held and changed by its presence in our lives. Just like that quilt that hangs in my office, our UU principles reflect our fundamental interdependence and the role that covenant plays as a North Star, a guide for how we live and our commitments.
We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny. We're all connected, breath, you and me. We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny. We're all connected, breath, you and me. We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny. We're all connected, breath, you and me. We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny. We're all connected, breath, you and me. We're all connected, breath, you and me.
This we know. We belong to each other. In 1963, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. articulated this truth from a narrow cell in Birmingham, Alabama. In his now famous Letter from a Birmingham Jail, King shared his sense of disappointment with white, moderate clergy who condemned the tactics of nonviolent direct action to confront the racist police violence, segregation, and Jim Crow laws of Birmingham. In that letter, King called us all to a deeper knowing of our interdependence, writing, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." King offered this soaring image along the backdrop of lament, frustration, and disappointment at the clergy who preach the values of equality, but in the moment of need and opportunity for real and material change in the lives of Black Americans, condemned King. I imagine on a personal level that all of us know this feeling of disappointment and anger at being let down by those who you thought were with you and would show up alongside you in your moment of need. It's painful. And right now, we are all experiencing layers of this deep personal, social, and collective lament. As a religious community, we know these things to be true, that no one is outside the circle of love, that every person has worth and dignity, that love and compassion are the foundation for the world we need. We know this, and yet everywhere we see these values forsaken. For decades, we have witnessed the erosion of bonds of care, compassion, and shared investment in community. In just the 46 years of my lifetime, we've witnessed devastating rise of inequality, poverty, and indebtedness in the U.S. Alongside this has been the escalation of policing and mass incarceration and the criminalization of poverty. For more than a decade, we've witnessed the explicit political embrace on the right of dehumanizing and divisive rhetoric and policy rooted in racism, xenophobia, patriarchy, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. For years, we've experienced the growth of propaganda and disinformation. And now we are living with the direct impacts of this rhetorical and policy violence in the banning of books and the silencing of history, in the suppression of voting rights, in the caging of children, and in the vigilante violence and growing support of an authoritarian, anti-democratic, white supremacist movement in the United States. And it is against this backdrop in the US that the COVID-19 pandemic began. And repeatedly, we have lost ground as we've responded to this virus through individualism, capitalism, and nationalism. Whether it is the refusal to wear masks out of some distorted notion of individual freedom, or locking down borders in ways that betray racist assumptions, to treating essential workers as expendable, to failing repeatedly to put global vaccination ahead of profits. We continue to fail in our responsibilities to each other. We live in a web of interdependence, whether or not we wish it so. And suffering thrives where the bonds of our relationships are defined by exploitation and domination. In the US, the coronavirus has thrived along historic and systemic fissures of disparity and racism and poverty. Fissures that have long defiled our social bonds. The impacts of these choices is that this virus has taken nearly 1 million lives in the US and caused so much isolation, despair, and trauma for all of us, but especially for those who are already impacted by systemic inequity and oppression. The layers of trauma, the layers of lament are deep. And in our own UU community, we've seen this disparity. We have lost so many young Black leaders, not just to the pandemic, but to the stress of these times. The deep lament is because the crisis of this pandemic, alongside the crisis of global climate change, of which the two are not unrelated, actually creates the necessity and the opportunity to draw humanity together for collective action to save lives and protect the future of our species. But again and again, we've chosen to double down on division, nationalism, profits, and a deadly status quo. Now, to be clear, I'm not pointing back to some golden day that never was. What we need is to chart a new way forward, rooted in covenant, rooted in an understanding of our fundamental belonging and our responsibilities to one another. King understood this when he reminded us that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. It is why it is so important to understand that the crises we face today are not just economic, or political, or social, or even environmental. They are fundamentally spiritual and moral crises, reflective of the ways that the threads of connection that bind us have been defiled by greed and exploitation. And the tools we need to reweave these bonds are compassion, deep solidarity, mutuality, and care. These are defining times. It matters that we root ourselves in deep care for one another and a courageous commitment to the struggle for justice and thriving for everyone and for our shared future. After all, our religious communities are not social clubs. Our theology, our commitment to covenant is not an intellectual exercise. It is a call to a way of living and being. It is a call to action. This is no time for a casual faith, no time for a casual commitment to one another and the values of human dignity, justice, and compassion that we hold dear. And this is no time to go it alone. Practicing covenant reminds us that it is an act of faithfulness to continue showing up for and with one another. It is an act of faithfulness to continue to center care in how we live in the midst of division. This is a time where we need greater courage and greater solidarity and a deeper commitment to the well-being of all people and all communities. We need investments that address poverty, climate change, and that invest in democracy and in human flourishing. Whenever I hear King's words, that we are tied in a single garment of destiny, I imagine humanity as a collection of brilliant stars held together across the fabric of the expansive night sky, holding promise for what can be when we understand that we belong to each other and that we share responsibility for one another. I also remember our own Universalist forebears who believed in universal salvation, but also knew that hell was something that existed here in this life, fostered by systemic injustice. And our work as a people of faith is to love the hell out of this world, to join our efforts to work for a world where the web of life is infused with care, with peace, with justice, with compassion and equity, such that all people can thrive in their wholeness. May it be so.
Sanctuary, God took, turned around, and we're going to have small groups. If you're on Zoom, Marsha will facilitate that. Let's take 8 minutes because 8 is around. It's at least you can start the conversation around what you heard and what can you individually do to do differently to create change aligned with our UU principles. Okay, let's start. Have a conversation. Welcome back. This is the start of the dialogue and the conversation. Okay, and welcome back on Zoom. And we hope that you will continue to have this dialogue around what we can do. You know, awareness is important, but also action is important. So let's keep the dialogue going.
Our closing hymn is number 323 in the gray hymnal, Break Not the Circle. The words are also in the order of service. Please rise as you are willing and able to participate in the closing hymn.
We now extinguish this flame, understanding we will continue to light hope and truth, amplify the warmth of our communities, expand the fire of our commitments, to continue dialogue on meaningful, impactful acts. These we carry forth in our hearts and hands until we are together again. So I invite Dora Anderson on behalf of the Caring Crafters.
We would like to present you with something that goes with your shirt. And oh my gosh. We would just like to say thank you so much for all of the work and being there on Zoom at the beginning. And this was going to go in your apartment if we had stayed on Zoom forever. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wow, it's beautiful.
And it has cicadas on it for your song. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let the party begin.
Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple of space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple of space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love.
Thank you, Bob Anthony. Thank you, Marsha, and thank you, Claire, for today's wonderful service. Jesse, thank you once again for all of the wonderful music, your wonderful talents, and yourself for coming, and know that you're always welcome here. We would love to keep seeing you. With that being said, we are at the end of our worship service, so we invite our congregations attending the worship service on Zoom as well, to stay and do the virtual Greet Your Neighbor coffee hour. And we also, the link will be in a chat box, and just go ahead and click on there or go there and be good to go. For those here in person, we will be having coffee and tea and brownies in celebration of this being Jesse's last service, and as a kind of just get together and one last thank you. So please remain here after, and no need to stack the chairs. We hope that you will use the chat box for those online as a virtual receiving line to leave a message about your appreciation for the worship service. And that concludes this. Happy Sunday, everybody.